So today, in honor of Outer Worlds 2 coming out just in a little bit over a month, I want to talk about Obsidian's last RPG, Avowed. Now, Avowed released February of this year, marking the first of 3 games that Obsidian is going to release this year, and it was met with pretty mixed reception. You see, 6 months ago, I dropped a review on Avowed after I'd played and finished the game in its entirety, and I said that the game disappointed me. I thought that it was a good game, I thought that it was competently made, but I still felt that a lot of what I expect from an Obsidian game was just straight up missing. The world was incredibly static, NPCs had no dynamism to them, the cities were super small and super forgettable. The gameplay, while it was super tight and good, was completely hampered by the progression system, and the story was my favorite part of the whole experience, but I still felt that it lacked a lot of character depth and nuance that I expect from an Obsidian game. So 6 months later, Obsidian has been hard at work dropping update after update to try and improve the game and make it better than it was when it first came out in February. And a lot of the changes look good. Some of the headlines that have come out of these Avowed updates are things like them reworking their warrior and ranger class. That's great to see because those were the 2 classes that I felt though lacked good progression and unique weapons from start to finish. I mean, I said as much in my review that I felt that once I found one unique weapon, I stuck with that weapon basically until the end of the game because I never found anything better in those 2 classes. Obsidian has gone out of their way to add more abilities to both of those skill trees, as well as add more unique weapons to find to allow for more experimentation between each build. And that's great to see because those were some of my biggest complaints. And so all this to say, I think it's safe to say that Avowed has made some solid changes and made some steps in the right direction. But the question still remains, is it enough to now completely recommend the game at any price point? I mean, the game was $70 at launch and it still is $70 right now on Steam. So it's important to take that into account when going back and looking at this game. So I fired up Avowed once more, played a little bit of it, with the intent on trying to figure out, is this game now worth it 6 months later at $70? So let's talk about Avowed. Let's talk about all the improvements that Obsidian has made in the past 6 months. Let's see if it's still fun to play. And let's again ultimately answer the question, is Avowed worth it 6 months later? If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to see more content like this. Now let's jump in. So like I said, I fired up Avowed and opened up an old save near the beginning of the game in Dawnshore. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to experience the game essentially from the beginning without playing the intro and doing all that, and just explore and see what have they really truly changed. Is this game still basically the same game that it was, a couple months ago, or have they actually really given it a full facelift and really, completely changed how I feel about this game? And so, fired it up, did a couple of quests, some quests that I had already done before, did some bounties, walked around the world, kind of explored the world, see what it had to offer, and just engaged in some combat as well. And, a lot of what I liked about Avowed is still present, and I needed to be reminded of it because, through these past 6 months, my opinion on the game has only soured more and more after playing other games. But jumping back into Avowed, I realized that there were still a lot of things that I did really truly like. For example, I still think that the world is gorgeous and incredibly well built. I mean, it's really beautiful to see Dawnshore. It's super fantasy-like, and it is a cool world to explore. And I do think that the exploration aspects of this game are still really great. Finding those little chests hidden in a random nook, or just turning a corner and seeing like a bunch of enemies there ready to fuck you up, like whatever it may be, like the exploration within each of these zones is still incredibly strong and was the catalyst of my playthrough 6 months ago. The exploration and the moment-to-moment gameplay is what kept me going throughout that entire playthrough, and I could see that coming back and how good it really was. But since Obsidian added some new abilities into the Ranger and Warrior classes, I decided to check them out. And unfortunately, I don't really think that they like completely changed the game for those two classes. Yes, there are now more abilities for the Ranger and Warrior classes for them to be able to like do things, not just stat buffs or percentage increases, which is good to see because the Mage class or the Magic class was the one that kind of had all the cool shit going on and all the cool abilities. I'm glad that they added some of those new abilities and different things for the Ranger and Warrior class to do, but they didn't really feel like they moved the needle to me in any like certain way to where I'm like, man, now I'm having a lot of fun. Now, you know, the progression is totally worth it. Like things like that. Like I didn't still feel like that while playing the game, which is a bit of a disappointment because I really wanted to, but unfortunately, I really don't think that any of these new abilities really changed the game in any certain way. What has changed the game though, and something that I really do enjoy, is that enemies are, in my opinion, a little tougher. They can now give you debuffs, such as they can slow you down or like freeze you, things like that. Things that you're able to do to them, they're now able to do to you, and that adds a lot of complexity within the gameplay. I already liked the moment-to-moment gameplay when the game released 6 months ago, and I like it even more now because of some of these changes. It really adds that level of dynamism in the gameplay and makes some of those encounters that were previously pretty easy now pretty difficult with some of the movement, and it also forces you to pay attention to what enemies you're fighting and how you can directly counter them, which is great to see in an RPG like this. But, you know, at the end of the day, I was still disappointed in a lot of the aspects of what I was disappointed with 6 months ago. I took the time to walk around like the main city of Paradise, and it didn't really feel like anything changed. The NPCs still stand in one spot. They still only really give you quests and are only there to give you quests and nothing more. And the entire city is basically just set dressing. And don't get me wrong, it's beautiful set dressing. I do think that the city of Paradise looks really good, but it's hard to really look really good and then not have that dynamism that makes it feel really good. So again, my museum comp that I had 6 months ago, where it felt like I was just walking through a museum, still stands true to this day, and unfortunately is something that I don't really see changing anytime soon unless some drastic changes are made. And so this is really what the crux of the whole situation is that I don't think Obsidian has the means or the funds or the people to be able to completely rework Avowed in a way that the fans really want to see it completely reworked. This isn't Cyberpunk 2077 backed by a massive AAA company in CD Projekt Red. Obsidian does not have the liberty to just go out and completely rework the game because of the fact that it was so bad at launch. And let me be completely clear, Cyberpunk 2077 was way worse at launch compared to Avowed. Avowed has systematic things that fans don't like about it and that I mentioned in my video 6 months ago, but as far as like performance and bugs and glitches go, it was fine. The performance was kind of hit or miss because it's an Unreal Engine 5 game, but I didn't really encounter any game-breaking bugs, and the performance was still good enough to get me through my playthrough without me being like actively frustrated with it. Cyberpunk 2077 at launch was riddled with bugs, it performed like shit, and had systemic failures within the game's systems that caused fans to not be happy. Avowed only had those systemic failures and didn't really have all the other bullshit, which is good to see, and which is why I don't think it needs a complete like 2.0 rework in these updates. At the end of the day, Avowed is still Avowed, and it will continue to be that until a major DLC is potentially dropped. Right now, Obsidian has made no plans to drop any DLC for Avowed, but I do think that if they ever decided to drop DLC for Avowed, I think it could potentially change the opinion of a lot of people on this game if they do it the right way. If they pull a Cyberpunk 2077 and drop an absolute banger DLC like Phantom Liberty that completely changes certain systems, features, and gameplay, adds a brand new zone or a brand new world that feels alive and feels tangibly dynamic compared to the base game zones, I think opinion on this game would change a lot. I mean, a lot of people's complaints really do boil down to the progression being kind of shit, the worlds being pretty static, and the cities being really static, and the story not really having important characters and really deep characters that have you think about your actions in the game. If Avowed manages to drop a DLC that adds a new zone that is tangibly different and has a dynamic city with NPCs moving around and, you know, dynamic encounters and things like that, changes up the formula in the gameplay, adds some really cool, unique weapons to find, tangibly really makes an effort to change the Ranger and Warrior class up and give combat scenarios to allow for those new abilities to be used, as well as give a story that is really interesting, really packs a punch, and has characters that people love, sentiment on Avowed could drastically change. If Obsidian manages to do that, this could be a Fallout 4 situation where people were kind of meh on the base game, the story was kind of shit, the gameplay was fine, the world was cool or whatever, but then Far Harbor dropped and sentiment on the game changed a lot because Far Harbor added a really cool story, a really cool new area, added some really cool gameplay mechanics, things like that. So those allowed Fallout 4 to kind of transcend from that, yeah, this is a cool game, to like, yeah, Bethesda's really cooking with this one. They've dropped some banger stuff. And I think Obsidian could really truly benefit from that. Granted, yes, they have Outer Worlds 2 coming out in a little over a month away, but I still think that Avowed deserves that love because it was like one of their major releases in these past like 5 or so years. In these past 5 or so years, Obsidian has really only dropped Outer Worlds, Pentiment, and then now Avowed and Outer Worlds 2. They need Avowed to do good, and they need Avowed to have good fan sentiment. And I think that a new DLC, if they do it right, could change things up and really help bring a lot of good press to them. What I don't want to see happen is a Starfield situation where people were meh on the base game like they were in Fallout 4, but then the DLC drops in Shattering Space and it just fucking sucks. Like, it's super short, the world is whatever, the story like is absolutely atrocious, there's no new gameplay features, and so the sentiment of Starfield's base game being kind of whatever transitions into like, damn, this game's actually kind of bad. And now Starfield's newest DLC, whatever it may be, it's been over a year since the last one, you know, has a lot of legwork to catch up if they ever want Starfield to become anything more than a pretty big blemish on Bethesda's front. I don't want to see Obsidian ever be put in that situation. I don't want to see Avowed ever be put in that situation because I have a lot of love for Obsidian games. Again, I always mention this, but Outer Worlds 1 was like one of the first RPGs I ever played and I fell in love with it. So I need Obsidian to be around, especially since Xbox is in the business of closing down studios. I need Obsidian to be around. I need them to keep dropping banger games. And for that to happen, Outer Worlds 2 needs to do good. And I think they really need to fix up some things in Avowed and drop a DLC that changes fan sentiment for good. But either way, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts on Avowed. You know, going back and playing it 6 months later really shed a lot of light on what I liked about the game and what I still really don't like about the game. So let me know down below if you ever got back and played Avowed or any other game, and did it actually impact the way you thought about the game, or did it change your sentiment on the game from when you originally played it at all? I'm curious to hear what y'all got to say. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button and please consider subscribing to see more content like this. If you've made it to the end of this video and want to see some extra stuff, consider becoming a channel member over here on YouTube or on Patreon. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much. It's been CGG. I'm out.